As usual, I'm just going to check if everything is all right on Twitter, if we are also live. It seems to be the case, and I'm going to check the stream on YouTube. Yeah,
Okay.
yes, we are live.
Should we get started?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, we can.
All right.
We can.
Okay. Hello, guys. Welcome to another Massa Community Live. I am Daniel, head of business development of Massa Foundation, and I'm joined by Joao, our head of marketing. And today we have a special guest as well. We have Christian Montoya from the MetaMask team. As you guys probably know, I'm pretty sure you are all users of MetaMask to some degree. MetaMask is one of the most popular crypto wallets out there, and probably one of the first gateways that Web2 people utilize to get into decentralized finance. They've been around for an eternity, at least in crypto years, and have definitely been one of the tools that we've all played with at some point. So, welcome, Christian.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for being
Yeah,
here.
today I think we're going to dig a little bit deeper into what's been going on with MetaMask lately in the past few years, the whole history, and maybe even snaps, which is something that we have integrated on Massa, and how this can potentially expand their ecosystem to a broader space.
Yeah. I just wanted also to add that for everyone that is listening, I'm starting to see some people on the chat. We have 42, around 42 at the moment. Since this is quite a recent update, maybe there will be some questions. So feel free to ask them on the chat, and we'll do our best to check them out. And yeah, welcome to. Glad to have you here with us, Chris. This was actually, I would say, one of the major updates for us this year. Something that the community was really looking forward, and I think the news was very, very well received. So yeah, glad to have you here with us today.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
Awesome. So I have a few questions. I think Joel has some as well, a few curiosities that we might have, but maybe you can just get started with a little intro about yourself and what your role is at MetaMask.
For sure. Yeah. So I've been with MetaMask for 3 years. So I'm one of the product leads. I lead a group called Network Expansion, and we're actually working on expanding MetaMask into new networks such as Solana and Bitcoin, which you may have heard about recently. We've had some news about the fact that we're going to be adding Solana and Bitcoin to MetaMask. We're also working on improving the account experience and the multi-chain experience within MetaMask as much as possible, right? So making MetaMask a truly seamless multi-chain wallet and very easy to manage accounts across different chains, and to be able to unify and abstract the experience around how you move funds around and how you interact with dApps. And we're actually working on a really cool new interface for dApps where you can do multiple accounts connected to a dApp. You can do connecting to different networks simultaneously. And I started at MetaMask to lead the Snaps platform and saw that through the launch in September of 2023. And that's been really exciting because through the Snaps platform, we've been able to support so many third-party developers building all kinds of really innovative integrations with MetaMask, including Massa. And so the Snaps platform enables developers to add lots of new networks to MetaMask, new naming services, new security solutions, and just lots of really cool features that up-level the whole UX of MetaMask. Very excited to be talking to you today. And I've been a user of MetaMask for years, even before I joined the company. And so just very passionate about decentralized technology and helping users access decentralized finance.
Really nice.
Awesome.
Just one question, Christian. When you say you are adding Solana to MetaMask, is that different from what already exists on the Snap part? Or
So what we've been working on, with the Snaps platform, right? We launched the ability for developers to add networks to MetaMask. But one of the biggest complaints that we got, from users and developers was, they want the network to be able to seamlessly integrate with MetaMask, right? And so
okay.
have the same experience that a non-EVM network has, like any Ethereum network, right? So the same experience as adding an Ethereum L2, right? And so what we've been working on over the past, I would say, 6 months or maybe more, is how we can build interfaces for those snaps to have a fully like integrated like experience where those
Mhm.
networks feel just like using Ethereum inside of MetaMask. And so we've actually been using the Snaps platform to build out our own Solana implementation internally. And we've been building a ton of new APIs and components, which we plan to eventually make available to third-party developers that actually make it possible that when you add one of these networks and you integrate it into MetaMask and you add an account from one of these networks, it has the fully integrated default account experience that you have for your Ethereum accounts today. So it's really just been a matter of massively improving the experience. And also, as we've been doing this, we've been enabling all of this functionality on mobile as well. So we're building on the platform and on the functionality that we've already, built out for third-party developers, and essentially dogfooding that internally so that, once we release Solana and Bitcoin, we can then bring this back to third-party developers and say, okay, now your network experiences can be as seamless as the ones that we've been able to build because you'll have access to the same tooling that we've been using.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer.
Okay. What if we run it back a little bit? So you said you've been around for about 3 years at MetaMask. Even 3 years ago, I think Web3 was quite a wild west compared to what it is like today. And MetaMask was definitely a bit more simplistic than what it is today. Uh, if you look back, how do you feel that the role of MetaMask has changed in the general landscape of Web3 across the years? Did you guys expect it to grow into what it is today, or did you start off with a simple idea and you thought that was it back then?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak too much to like the early days, right? MetaMask has been around, I think, maybe 8 years at this point, if I'm doing the math correctly. And it started out right as a very humble like key manager, and essentially, the original idea was like maybe like a browser for Ethereum, and then it made more sense as an extension, right? But it was essentially like how can you manage accounts in the browser and then connect to websites, right? So it was like the original like DApp connection solution, and that I don't know if the original founders expected it to become so popular. It was something that they built that they saw the need for it, right? And it just grew as the ecosystem grew, right? So the interesting thing about MetaMask is that the success was largely driven by the dApps that were, implementing Ethereum functionality, right, and connecting to MetaMask. And primarily, as users were flocking to these new types of applications, they were then going and installing MetaMask, right, to be able to use those applications, right? So it is really something that grew with the ecosystem, and as Web3 became more mainstream, so did MetaMask. And I would say that like what's really evolved over time is the level of functionality that the wallet itself needs to offer, right? So it's not just a key manager anymore, and it's not just an interface for connecting to dApps, right? At some point, it became clear that, okay, your wallet also needs to offer multiple security features, right? It needs to help filter out malicious websites and protect you from malicious transactions and simulate your transactions so that you see what's coming, right? When you're actually performing a transaction, right? So things like simulations and, malicious transaction warnings are something that MetaMask had to add over time, right, to help protect users, right? And then it became, okay, it's not just Ethereum mainnet, right? Now it's all these L2s and other L1s, and users need to be able to bridge and swap and get access to different tokens. They need to be able to, stake from within the wallet. They need to be able to on ramp and off ramp. They need to be able to get money in and out of Web3, right, without having to go through a centralized exchange. So it was like, okay, now, you need to have all these curated features, right, to help users really move in the direction of MetaMask allows you to be your own bank, right? And not just like it's not just a key manager, it's not just for accounts, it's for actual decentralized finance, right? And it becomes like a finance application and a hub for everything that you want to do. And so I would say that like the level of complexity of what MetaMask needs to offer has grown considerably in this time frame, right? As we're trying to meet users, meet their needs where they are and what it is that they're trying to do. And that in turn makes it more and more important to offer ways for developers to come in and extend MetaMask and build lots of cool features, right? Because at some point it's just impossible for one team to build all the features that users want, right? And that was what motivated, like, how can we make the wallet experience extensible? And how can we essentially continue to adhere to the whole principle of permissionless innovation, right? Which is core to every blockchain, right? And it's like the wallet should be able to like adhere to that principle as well. And that's what we've been, it's really been part of our core strategy.
Yeah, I think you brought up some very good points. And for me, as a Web3 dinosaur, sometimes I feel like I forget that MetaMask has added so many new things. So I still do a lot of stuff the stupid way. I forget that there is a portfolio manager where you can check multiple chains. So I still go and switch the chain manually to check my tokens. I forget that there's a bridge very often. But I think for the new users that don't have the Web3 muscle memory that I have, it's some very new stuff that has been added.
Yeah, it's true. I know exactly what you mean. I'm still learning about things that, I mean, I've been here for a while, but I've been using it for so long and I'm still learning about features that I didn't realize they had.
Yeah. And yeah, then I wanted to ask some stuff about multi-chain topics. I think you've discussed a little bit about it in the intro as well. But obviously, there's a lot of new tech stacks that are appearing, a lot of different chains. Not everything is EVM compatible anymore, including us as well. How are you guys keeping up with all of these different topics? Of course, you can't make everyone happy. You can't dedicate your development team to support every single tech stack, but I'm sure that it's something that is in the back of your head, and you might be thinking that down the line, Web3 will move potentially to something different than EVM or Solidity as a core tech stack, and maybe into something else. So, how do you guys deal with that and prepare for it? And someone was also asking in chat if there's ways to make non-EVM compatible platforms compatible with MetaMask directly on Android or iOS. Uh, are there some discussions internally about stuff like this?
Yeah, so I'll start with the first one. So, um, a big part of what MetaMask has been doing over the past couple years is making really what I would say are abstracted and agnostic interfaces for managing networks and managing accounts, right? So accepting that there are lots of different virtual machines, right? So there's Ethereum virtual machine, there's also Solana virtual machine, and others. There's Cosmos and everything, and they have completely different implementations. There's Starknet, which has its own virtual machine that's different from Ethereum, even though it's an Ethereum L2. And so you have all of these different implementations, different account types, different ways of doing transactions, different models, right, for how you even validate a transaction, right? Different smart contract languages, and eventually you have to really abstract how you implement all of these different interfaces in the wallet. And so we've actually been working on multiple standards, right, for how to make it so that you can build a wallet that can interface with all of these different ecosystems, right? And it's called the Chain Agnostic Standards Alliance, right? CASA. So Chain Agnostic Standards Alliance is a standards body where we've been implementing lots of different things. Like, how do you even just address different networks, right? How do you have like a common interface for identifying, the difference between Cosmos and Sui and Tron and Ethereum and Solana and Bitcoin and so forth? And then how do you, have like a common interface for all the different methods and the different DApp interfaces that these different networks have, right? So we've been working on that and then building that into our product, right? To say, okay, and it's interesting, we've been working a lot with Wallet Connect on some of these standards. Wallet Connect is another company that has been, they're trying to make all of these different networks accessible to wallets as well. So they're in the same boat, right? We need to be able to get the interfaces and the technology in a place where you really can integrate lots of different networks at the same time, right? And build a wallet that can talk to all of these different ecosystems simultaneously. And so that's what we've been pioneering. And we've been, essentially building out our internal infrastructure and the Snaps platform that developers can use in such a way that whatever functionality you want to add, there's an extensible way to do it. And you can make it part of the interfaces in such a way that users can manage accounts across lots of different networks in MetaMask, right? And so essentially, not so much catching up to the ecosystem, but moving ahead of where the ecosystem is at, right? Where a wallet really is like a super generalized interface for interacting with all of these different blockchains in the same way, right? And making certain things common, right? So like a common approach to doing signatures and transactions and connecting to dApps, but then also having room for, if there's some unique feature that a blockchain has, right? You can also build that functionality into MetaMask in a really extensible way, right? So making sure that like whatever that functionality is, right? What we don't want to do is become a wallet where like we just give you like a very basic interface into each blockchain, and then all those unique features are kind of like, excluded, right? We want to do it in such a way that everything that all the innovation that's happening, we can make that available to users in an accessible way. And I'll mention on in terms of like mobile. So I mentioned earlier that we've been porting all of our Snaps functionality to mobile, right? And porting all of this like multi-chain functionality to mobile. So later this year, right, you'll be able to install Snaps. You'll be able to use the Snaps platform on mobile, and then what we're going to work on is then how we can get third-party snaps working on mobile as well, right? So that eventually it's not just MetaMask extension, you can have these snaps on mobile too. And it's something that so many users have been asking for, because
Awesome.
nowadays, I would say the dominant sort of like interface for Web3 isn't even necessarily on the browser, it's actually on mobile, right? People are connecting to all these cool apps on mobile, they have their wallets on mobile, and everybody's saying, okay, like that's where I want to be able to use these snaps. And so we've been working very hard to make sure that users have that same functionality on MetaMask mobile as well.
As a Web3 dinosaur, I still do everything on my computer, but yeah, I know that most people don't.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
But yeah, and on the same topic as snaps, I was wondering, what are some of the most interesting usages that you've seen of this across different ecosystems? Whether it's like funny, innovative, anything that you might have really liked from snaps, what is it?
Yeah, so one really interesting use case is, there are some snaps that essentially give you access to like decentralized communities, right, that are providing really cool functionality, right? So like there's one snap called Claros, and Claros actually has like a way for communities to determine like which, smart contracts or which dApps are like safe to use and which ones are risky, right? And so the snap itself is just an interface for you to see like what's in the curated registries that Claros offers, right? To see like whether a certain smart contract may be dangerous, right? And so it's just an interface to that. But what Claros, the product itself, offers is actually really cool, right? It's actually really complex, right? And so bringing those types of integrations into MetaMask is really, really powerful, because you're getting more than just like one single provider saying like, this smart contract or this website is potentially malicious, right? You're actually getting like the power of the entire community to offer that to you as well. We also have like multiple implementations of like naming services. And so they're doing like, okay, you can have like, instead of like a long, jumble of letters and numbers, you have like, Montoya.arb or Montoya.bnb, right? And you can just use that. And that's a really cool UX improvement. But then some of these providers are also working on really cool UX abstractions on top of that, right? So there's like clusters, which gives you like one name and then has various like suffixes, and then you can have like, okay, Montoya / ETH, Montoya / Solana, right? And so now I can have like names across different interfaces with one like common interface. And then there's cool things like like some of these providers are doing like like payment ID, right? Which then allows you to do like a common interface for like getting your funds in and out of exchanges, right? So they're coming up like on top of just naming, they're coming up with all of these really cool ways to help you get access to liquidity and move your funds around in a really seamless way, and integrate lots of different services. And so, what that really enables is like, okay, you can bring in these innovative solutions into MetaMask and really make everything way more seamless, right? Similar to like, when I want to go to a website, it's not, I have to know the IP address. It's just google.com, right? Now it's like we're doing that for identity as well, right? It's the ability to just say, okay, if you just know Montoya.eth, right? Now you know how to like get in touch with me, send me funds, interact with me in Web3.
Okay, awesome. I definitely agree on the address side. I think especially for new users that don't know much about Web3, it might be quite confusing for them to go and navigate through OXF6, 7B types of addresses. So that's been a really nice game changer. I think at DWeb with Massa, we're also focusing a lot on this. Not just on people identifying websites really easily, but making sure that when they find an address for a website, it is 100% that website and it can't be fooled by anyone. Nobody can have access to it besides the person that deployed it. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of potential to keep improving stuff like this for the average user. Okay.
Personally, me, I didn't really know about the existence of snaps before the integration with Massa, to be honest. I don't know if it's the case with some of the guys that are listening to us today, but very quickly, can you probably give us the main differences, or maybe what are the limits on the snaps, opposed to, of course, the regular experience that we can have on MetaMask?
Yeah, so the best way I can explain it is like these are like modules that run inside of MetaMask, right? So a third-party developer can build functionality that runs inside of MetaMask and actually adds features to MetaMask for any user. And so different from like, okay, a dApp, like anyone can deploy a dApp and a dApp can connect to MetaMask. Users can connect to that dApp with MetaMask. This is something that's actually when a user installs it into MetaMask, it's running inside of the wallet and actually modifying the wallet experience, right? And it's doing that in a way that's very safe. And it's we actually use a sandbox model, and we have multiple different security features that ensure that the snap only does what it's supposed to do, right? So it doesn't have access to your accounts, it doesn't have access to your private keys, but it's able to just provide new features and new interfaces on top of the MetaMask experience, right? And there's different categories of snaps. So there's some snaps that provide security features, right? They can show you warnings when you're interacting with a dApp or a smart contract, right? And help
Yeah.
catch potential malicious transactions or signatures that might cause you to lose funds, right? And they're essentially just able to warn you in that experience. There's some snaps that provide naming services that help you, integrate different naming providers so that you can resolve like a Montoya.nft to an address and then send funds, right? There's some snaps like Massa that actually add like full functionality for networks, right? So being able to interact with like Starknet or Cosmos or Partisia or another blockchain, right? Or Massa, right? In MetaMask, right? To add that wallet functionality. And it makes it much easier for a new blockchain. Instead of having to build an entire wallet, they can build a snap and integrate with the most popular wallet today, right? And users can quickly onboard to that network. And then there are even some snaps that provide custom types of accounts, right? So they bring in like MPC accounts, right? Essentially like multi-sigs, right? So you can have an account where when you go to sign a transaction, right, you have to approve it on an iPhone, right, or an Android, right? Or you approve it with an email, right? And so they're able to provide these types of like 2FA or 3-factor, signing, right, for these types of accounts, right? So they can actually add totally different types of accounts into MetaMask. And this is all functionality that we built essentially to give developers a way to bring that functionality into MetaMask, right? And to be able to give, whether it's, specific functionality you need for your dApp or a totally new type of innovation that you want to make available to users, you can do that through snaps.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hey, I think it's interesting, and also, um, as you were saying, it's probably it can help a lot some of the newer projects because, as you were saying, MetaMask is there, it already exists, and the users are there. But on the other side, I was wondering if I don't know how old is probably the first time that you introduced the first snap, but did you saw a very big positive impact in terms of user base since you started to introduce the snaps?
Yeah, so, like I said, we launched in September of 2023, so it's been about a year and a half. And in the first
Okay.
year, we had over 1 million users installing snaps and using them with the MetaMask extension, right? And that's really
Okay.
impressive considering it's just on the extension, right? So I think once we launch snaps on mobile, you'll see even more activity as well. But that's a huge number, right, in Web3. And so, really what it is like MetaMask has, tens of millions of users every month, right? And when you're building a snap, you're getting access to all of the users who are using MetaMask today. And if you're able to promote your Snap and bring something useful to users, right? It's very seamless for them to just in a couple of clicks to install your Snap and start using your feature. And in some cases, the features that our people are integrating are very simple, right? It's essentially like you can add notifications for your DApp, right? You can add like, just like resolving your naming service. You can do that in like 50 lines of code, right? It can be a very simple snap that you can deploy. I know this because I built one myself, right? So I built one that resolves like Farcaster and Lens IDs in MetaMask, and it's about 50 lines of code, right? And so you can build very simple things. You can build things that store verifiable credentials in MetaMask, right? And essentially like storing, even just like authorization, right? So when a user comes back to your DApp, they don't have to sign in again, right? That's something that XMTP did, right? And so yeah, it's been really impressive, not just for the user numbers, but also like we have over 100 developer teams building snaps. We have some developers who have, essentially like made it their full-time job, right? So they've actually been able to like, you know, be like fully employed building snaps externally, right, as independent developers. And some really cool like grants for snaps, right? So like there's a Zcash snap being built right now. There's a grant, that the team that's building it got a grant to build this snap, and the community, the Zcash community, has been really excited about the fact that we'll have like a Zcash integration with
Really
MetaMask, right?
nice.
So that's like, and that's so it's something that it's like it's really exciting for users, right? Just to even see this level of like extensibility, right? That like a team can build this type of functionality with MetaMask and make it available to anyone.
Yeah, yeah, I agree 100%. And I really think the second boost can be once it goes live on mobile, then even for us, it would be very, very nice. I agree.
Yeah,
Definitely for us, yeah.
yeah, for sure.
People are asking about this a lot. Okay. And on the user side, just a little bit more to close the topic off. I know that you guys have worked a lot on different features that can make their lives easier. We've already talked about the portfolio, the bridge, uh, connecting to different blockchains. What do you think is the missing piece? Like, what else can we bring to the Web 2, Web 2.5 user base, the ones that are trying to get in that can make their lives easier? I think we've seen like account abstraction in some places. We've seen 2FA. We've seen wallets where people don't have to hold their own keys to make their lives a little bit easier, gasless operations. But these are all quite difficult topics for people that are just getting in. What do you think is missing to make everything super easy for the average person?
Yeah, I mean that's a complex question. I think if I knew all the answers, I would just go and start building them right away, because this is what we want to see. We want to see everyone being able to onboard to Web3 as seamless as possible. There's a few things that we're doing at MetaMask, right? So we have our view on this, right? One is like, make it as seamless as possible for users to get money in and out, right? So things like, being able to on ramp easily, but also being able to spend, right? And some people are like, okay, why would I ever want to spend my crypto, right? But there, if you can't spend it, like it needs to be money, and that means you need to be able to spend it, right? And if you're getting paid in USDC, or you're getting, like staking rewards or yield, right? Or you're doing lending and getting back yield from that, you should have a way to spend that, right? So what we're doing with MetaMask Card, for example, is essentially making it so that that last mile problem of how do I actually go to a retailer and just buy groceries with crypto, right? Making that as seamless as possible, and making it so that you're actually spending from an on-chain balance, right? It's not a conversion that's happening. You're not having to like like you know off ramp your funds just to get your money into a card, right, to be able to use it, and being able to link it so that you can essentially say, okay, I want my Aave rewards to pay out into an on-chain account, and then I just spend that, right? And it just keeps the balance increases over time, right? And it's not something where I have to like add funds to some like off-chain account every time I want to spend funds, right? We're also working on a lot of different ways to make it so that you don't just have to manage like a seed phrase, right? Like your secret recovery phrase, which is the thing that if you lose it or expose it, right, then you lose all your accounts, right? A lot of users are just afraid, right? They're just afraid of getting scammed. It's too technical, right? And so essentially making it so that you can set up a Web3 account as easily as you set up like an email, right? And back it different ways. You can back it with an email, back it with a mobile device, right? Essentially have like 2 or 3 factor authentication, right? So it becomes as, seamless, but also as secure as the way you manage like a bank account, right? That's really what I think people are looking for, right? And so moving in that direction and making it very easy for a user to come in and set up an account in a way, that they're familiar with, right? With the tools that they already have, and ensuring that that account, they can do all the things they want to do with it. They can easily like bridge funds around, but also if you have USDC on 5 different chains, to you it's just one balance of USDC,
Hmm.
right? Or one balance of like euro, digital euro, right? Like having that shared balance and being able to just spend that without having to think about, I got to move my funds from Arbitrum to Linea or from Linea to Base or whatever, right? Like then that's really what makes it seamless for users. And so those are the types of abstractions that we're working on to make everything way more accessible to users.
Turning magic money into real money.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
and I'm happy you brought up MetaMask card because it's one of the things that I wanted to talk about. I've played around with a ton of different cards from like basically everything. I was quite sad when Binance got rid of their card because I really liked that one. I still use crypto.com to some degree, but the one that you guys have at MetaMask is actually quite different from those. Uh, just technically speaking, it is very different. I don't know if there are many competitors in the market for something like this. The only one that I could think of is probably Safe, that also has a non-custodial card. So maybe you could explain to viewers what some of the benefits of that would be compared to the crypto.com card or Coinbase card or anything else that exists right now.
Yeah, so the best way I can explain it, and there's some people on the card team who might explain it better than me, but essentially, it's not just like a top-up card, right? It's a true debit card, right? And when you go through the setup process, you'll see how it's different and how it works. You're actually setting up an on-chain account. And right now, we're using Linea. That's our ZK EVM L2, right? It's a fully EVM equivalent layer 2 network and enables us to do a lot of really cool innovations, right? So you're setting up an account on Linea and you're creating a delegation, right? Where that account has authorization to spend funds. And then you can do a lot of really cool things with that because it is on chain. You can say, okay, I'm going to set a spending limit, right? I'm going to say, okay, this, a card transaction can only spend up to a certain amount. Or you can say, okay, I'm going to set up a mechanism to, add funds to that account periodically, right? So when you can essentially set it up to, okay, every month I'm going to add a certain amount of funds from other on-chain account, right? Or you can even say, because it's an on-chain account, you can go into some yield generating DApp, right? And say, okay, I want the yield that's paying out from some money that I have staked to land in this account. And then I just have the balance. And then there's all these really cool things you can do. Like there's actually a developer in the community who built a widget that you can install on your phone that shows your balance of USDC in that account, right? So then you just see how much money you have in that account, and it's just reading that from the blockchain, right? So it's like the total like full circle of like the cool permissionless innovation that blockchain offers. We can actually build that now, and then we even have a community rewards program. So aside from just getting like cash back, which is cool in and of itself, we actually have a bunch of different dApps on Linea that are actually paying out community rewards. So you spend with your MetaMask card account, right, which can be a completely like separate account from anything that reveals you, right? You can make it as private and secret as you want, but then those dApps are able to just airdrop rewards to MetaMask card holders based on their spending, and they like it because they know those are real users, right? So it's like fully Sybil resistant. They're airdropping their tokens from their community and onboarding users to their community through MetaMask card. And they're able to identify those users on chain simply because those are MetaMask card accounts without having to identify anything revealing about those users, right? So those are just really cool things that you can't do any other way. And because it's a true debit card, like you're actually able to spend funds the way you would spend funds from a bank account. So it really is like neo banking that you're able to do through the power of like actual like on-chain accounts and delegations and authorizations that you can create with MetaMask.
Really nice. Very, very nice. Perfect. Yeah. I don't know if it's available in France, by the way. I gotta
I
check.
think it is.
Yeah, it should be in like the whole EA and UK as well. So I think we're generally available in Europe, and it's in pilot right now in the US, and it's generally available in most of Latin
Mhm.
America. And we're very quickly expanding to more countries. So over the rest of the year, you're going to see us onboarding a lot more regions, and eventually, going global as we continue to expand the program.
And
Okay.
are you guys having any issues with MiCA regulations or anything along those lines right now with
That
certain
was
assets that would be featured on the card?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, primarily the assets are, on-chain stable coins. So, that's the main sort of like spendable asset that we're focused
Mhm.
on.
Okay, because recently I had a situation with Crypto.com where I moved some money to it, wanted to use it on the card, and basically found out that USDT is not allowed on Crypto.com anymore because of Mika. So then I had
Oh,
to move it
interesting.
back to my
Yeah, I wasn't
MetaMask
aware of that.
wallet and
Yeah.
pay the fees to Crypto.com for absolutely no reasons.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, no, we haven't had complaints like that from users at all.
that's the issue with the EU regulations every time. But yeah, we try to work on it even with these issues. Um,
Yeah.
One of the topics that I wanted to discuss, also I think because it's very tied into what we do at Massa, it would be about the wallet X. I think maybe the most notable one that we have that we had recently was by Bitwitsafe. Um, I think, as we know, one of the reasons for this was I think the safe servers were targeted for that attack. Why am I saying this? Because at Massa, the solution that we have that is called DWeb, which means decentralized DWeb. The idea is that by replicating, sorry, the data on the multiple community nodes that we have, it allows you to host the front ends on chain and preventing the attacks, takedowns, or exploits. So I think I had a question is, do you think a solution like this could be helpful to maybe bring a bit more trust to the use of MetaMask? Not only MetaMask, but I would say wallets in general. If you have any idea on this topic, that would be.
Yeah, for sure. And so just to give a little bit of context, what you're referring to with the safe exploit that affected Bybit,
Mhm.
right, was a supply chain attack
Well,
partly, right? So there were a few different things that the hackers did, right, to trick the Bybit employees to sign a malicious transaction that allowed the funds to be extracted. But one of the things that they did was create a fake front end of the safe, you know, website where the user didn't even know on their machine they were viewing a fake front end that pointed to a different contract and they were signing a malicious transaction. And so this type of supply chain security is something that like MetaMask has been working on for years because the founders of MetaMask identified that this was going to be a huge risk for Web3 in the future, right? And so we've been building out our own tooling like Lava Moat, which allows you to lock down your supply chain. But another one of the things that I think the ecosystem hasn't quite made progress on, and I think is super important, is essentially like front end
mhm,
verification, right? Which is what you're talking
exactly.
about, right? And so I actually did a talk last year in Brussels at the MetaMask Spotlight event where I talked about the ability to verify a front end and ensure that you're interacting with the front end that the developer intended to be deployed, right? And you can do this now where you can actually like checksum the entire code base, publish a proof on chain, right? And then when a user in a browser with a wallet, whatever, loads that front end, can then verify that proof and be sure that yes, this is what safe intended to deploy and not a copy or essentially a compromised
Exactly.
version, right? And so being able to host front ends like duplicate, right, and host and have like decentralized front ends, right, where you have like multiple of the same interface and then publish those proofs on chain is one way that you could provide, right, and that developers could take advantage of this type of solution where when the user goes onto that front end, what they should see in their wallet is like a thing that says, this front end has been checksummed, the checksum has been verified, the proof matches what was deployed on chain, the deployer on chain has a verifiable credential, a reliable, like a provable identity that this is a Massa employee or a Safe employee or a crypto.com employee, right? That it's actually verified by their org. And then I, as a user, know this front end has not been compromised and I can proceed interacting with it. That's what I would really like to see. And we're not quite there yet. We're kind of there with like the actual smart contracts, and you can verify a smart
Mhm.
contract. But with the front ends, if the front end gets compromised and the front end is pointing to a different smart contract, then all that security effort that we've done to make smart contracts reliable is for nothing.
Yes.
Like and we acquired Wallet Guard last year. The guys from Wallet Guard are always like, your security is only as good as like the weakest link in your
Mhm.
implementation. And right now the front ends are the weakest link, right? That's the thing that we need to fix next for
Nice.
sure.
Then if our CEOs are listening, then I think we have a real opportunity here
We would
to
love
work
to
with you
help
Yeah.
with
guys.
that too.
Yeah. Because I think mainly, I'm pretty sure MetaMask is maybe one of the first things that new people install or download. So yeah, I think that's a very big topic there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay. And yeah, then maybe lastly, we can just have a closing question. What do you think the future of MetaMask looks like, and other Web3 wallets as well, from whichever ones you may know? What do you think they will look like in a few years? What kind of genius stuff might come out in the market then? How do you think you guys will also deal with governmental regulation, since we also discussed Mika a little bit and some other things that are going on around the world? Do you think we'll be free to continue with our Web3 wallets, or are we going to get stopped eventually?
Yeah. So, okay, couple things. I 3 years out, like I think 1 year out, you see wallets moving in the direction of, you don't have to manually switch networks. You don't have to think so much about which network you're
Mhm.
on. You have assets and you think in terms of assets, and it's like, okay, how much USDC do I have on Linea, or how much ETH do I have on Arbitrum, right? Like you're just sending funds, right? But you're not having to like you're able to see aggregated like all the different networks you have a unified view. You can see your total balances, right? So your wallets are actually like giving you that level of abstraction. 3 years out, I think you get to the point where it's like, I have a combined balance of ETH across all these different chains, and I can very seamlessly make a transaction on base, and I have ETH on Arbitrum, and it just quickly does a bridge and in an atomic like single step, right, and moves those funds at very low cost to me as a user. And uh, Another thing I would say is, you see a lot more capabilities of what you can do, like your types of like banking use cases, like lending, borrowing, staking, earning yield, right? Doing all of those things within the wallet without having to go through a centralized exchange, right? And being able to do to whatever degree is required by regulators, whether it's like I have to go and get a soul bound NFT that verifies that I'm an EU citizen or a US citizen, but it allows me to go interact with certain protocols, like decentralized protocols. If that's the extent that it has to go to, we have the capability to build those things, right? So we can build things in a way that is, privacy preserving, but also relying on the functionality that we have, right, to comply with regulations where we need to. I also think, when we talk about regulations, to talk about your second question, um, I think it's a combination of, you know, if you look at what Uber did, right? When Uber started out, it wasn't legal, right? It wasn't right. The regulations didn't really cover what Uber was doing. But eventually you become so ubiquitous, right? And there's so many users who want your product, who are relying on your product, right? There's the political capitals there, right? Where people say they're able to start pressuring their elected leaders, right, their politicians, to say, no, we want friendly regulations, right? This is actually a voting issue. And it really was in the last election in the US, right? Despite all the other issues that went into the US election, one thing that was very clear was the US voters wanted friendly regulations, and they weren't happy with the previous administration and how their attitude and their posture towards cryptocurrency as technology, right? And so And I think that that's we're going to see progress in that area in Europe as well. Right. And so I think that that's an important thing to really push for, is to say, look, the users have the political capital to actually influence the regulations, right, and the policies. At the same time, there's always going to be regulatory pressure. And I think, our security team at MetaMask says this over and over. If you're running a protocol and you know that North Korea is laundering funds through your protocol, if you don't deal with that, sooner or later, the regulators are going to come knocking, right? So to some degree, you cannot knowingly facilitate crime, right? And we need to be better as an industry to police our own services, to police our products, and ensure that we're doing our diligence, right, as decentralized like technology leaders, right? Or we're going to have to come to the table with the regulators at some point, right? So, we have to, on the one hand, work with our users to continue to grow adoption, and then use that political capital to go to regulators to get sensible regulation. On the other hand, we have to police our own domain. We have to do what's right on behalf of users and ensure that we're making Web3 maximally accessible and friendly to the everyday users that have legitimate use cases and are benefiting, and not so accessible to your North Korean hacker who's laundering stolen funds, right? And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think regulation is inevitable eventually. I'm just hoping that it's not going to make our lives more complicated than they already are with traditional banking or traditional finance. Because that was one of the most beautiful things for me when I entered Web3, just how easy it was to do stuff. But for nefarious purposes, of course, we need to figure out solutions for that eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, we have the capabilities. We have the capabilities for me as a user to go and get an on-chain verification, like from Coinbase, right? That puts on chain, this is a US citizen, this user has gone through KYC with Coinbase, and yet I don't have to reveal anything about myself on chain, right? And that verification, that verifiable credential that lives on chain can go and give me access to decentralized protocols, right? And I can continue to maintain my privacy. I think it's more powerful than what you can do with a bank. I think that we undersell it oftentimes, the capability for public blockchains to be privacy preserving and verifiable, right? And to actually have open finance, and at the same time make it allow users to have the level of privacy that they want when they're interacting with these services. We have the capability to build those things. The technology side is actually really powerful, and we can build some really cool things if we commit to providing that level of providing those values to users.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that also even I don't know if it's maybe something with the newer generation, but even on the banking system, I would say that things are getting maybe a bit smoother. It's getting easier to do everything, and I think people are getting very used to being able to do everything on their phones and without having that much so questions asked. And yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that, for example, Revolut is getting this much value as right now. And I would say that's the thing that is native to the blockchain. And now what we need to do is find a way to put that out there in an easy way for the people that are already using these apps. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say within some regions, within some national jurisdictions, the systems are getting better. Similarly, Pix in Brazil is very, very user friendly now. It's very easy to interact with finance, specifically within Brazil. What Web3 enables is cross-border technology that the various jurisdictions are not so much incentivized to do. And I think there's a huge opportunity for someone in Brazil to get access to USD, right, and to have inflation resistance, right, via USD stable coins on chain, and also get access to tokenized real world assets, right, to be able to say, hey, do you want to invest in real estate in the US? You can do that through tokens, and you really don't have any other way to do that, right? So being able to give And this is where it's like the opportunity is massive to bring real world assets on
Mhm.
chain and to make stablecoin implementations as seamless as possible, right? And that's a super like attractive thing to a lot of people who are not necessarily interested in like meme coins and highly volatile like cryptocurrencies, right? They're not necessarily interested in investing like in Ethereum as a gas token, for
Mhm.
example, but they are interested in accessing, right, fiat currencies on chain, right, that maybe, are inflation resistant and less volatile, right? And they are interested in accessing like real world assets that maybe they're not able to invest in any other way, right? And so I think that that's a huge opportunity that a government payment system isn't going to solve that.
I know, I do agree with that. Yeah, I would say it's problems that we are not really used to have them, being in Europe and probably other, maybe more developed countries. But I would say that's one of the main paths to follow for a massive adoption also, because that's just solving real issues. So yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah, and on the RWA side, I would love to do like another hour long about that as well, but I will contain it for
That's
today.
definitely fine.
Yeah, it's already
Yeah,
15 minutes in. Sorry very
yeah.
much.
And I know we're almost out of time, but I know there's some comments in the chat. People are talking about like with Manifest v3 in Google Chrome now, it's impossible to verify like a front end in a browser. I will mention that like we've been building UI capabilities into snaps
Mhm.
themselves, right? So you can actually build like interactive like dApp front ends in a snap that runs inside of MetaMask rather than going through the browser and going through like HTTP or HTTPS. And we've been doing that because we want to build the ability for a user to access like a dApp within a snap itself,
Oh,
right? So
okay.
actually have like decentralized front end that lives inside of MetaMask, right? And so you can have like a snap homepage that's interactive. You can do swapping, bridging, all those different types of capabilities. So one reason I mentioned that is because the content of a snap is checksummed, right? So now you can have a highly secure and verifiable front end for a dApp, right? And so I will say, like, this may be a little bit presumptuous, but like, if the front end for Safe was a snap, right, and not just a website, it would have been impossible for someone to compromise that,
That's what you
right?
mean.
Because that's a fully verifiable. You're publishing a snap. We verify those. It goes through a validation process with our internal engineers, right? And what runs inside of MetaMask is checksummed, and that checksum is checked every time you load that snap, right? So that's really powerful. And so it's just an idea, just something for people to think about. There are other ways to do this. At some point, I think in Web3, we're going to have to reduce our reliance on the browsers
Yeah.
themselves that are in some cases very difficult to work with and are not thinking about security. And we're going to have to think about different ways to do these things.
Awesome. And Damir, CEO of Massa Labs, is also asking if we can deploy DWeb access in the Massa Snap.
Let's talk about that on another meeting. I would like to explore that. That could be really cool. Yeah, we'll see.
Perfect.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. I think it was a very insightful conversation. Definitely a topic that I like a lot as a user of MetaMask as well. So I appreciate that you joined
Same.
us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been a great
Thank
conversation
you very
today.
much, Christian.
Awesome. Hope to have you
Thank you.
next
Have a
time as
good
See you
well
weekend.
soon.
at some point.
See you. And yeah, and just to what we have a few other options for the next community lives, which we are not entirely sure when we are going to do them. But again, maybe this is a good opportunity for you guys if you want to give some ideas on who you would like to see, so that we can have another beautiful conversation like we had today. You can just put a comment on our Twitter on the Telegram and yeah. Uh, I think that's pretty much it.
Bye,
See you,
Christian.
Christian. Bye bye.
Yeah, and then just maybe to close off on the MetaMask Snaps topic a little bit, for now, we do have mass transfers that are supported in it, but not only that. So there's a few other integrations that are active right now. Maybe some of these, Joel, we could showcase in one of the future community lives.
Yes, yes, totally. That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Would be a good idea. Um,
When Uniswap on DWeb. We'll see. Maybe very soon. And
Yeah,
so
but
right now,
it's already live on the web, by the way. It's already live on, so the MetaMask Snap is already live on the web. It's live. It's going to be live also on the governance platform. I'm pretty much sure you can also buy MNS with snaps as of right now. And yeah, so yeah, it's being integrated into the ecosystem. That's the idea.
yeah, and even some of the grant projects that are about to be released are also
Yeah.
integrating this. So you guys will be seeing a lot more of this. And of course, as we head towards EVM compatibility, it's going to make things much easier. So we could find a much quicker way to do full MetaMask integrations for our chain and for all of our products. And yeah, if there are any other questions, maybe we can reply to some of them. But we already went for about 55 minutes.
Yeah.
And yeah, as Joao said, for the next community live, maybe we can get an opinion from the community as well on what they would like to see, whether it's a new product that will be on Massa on chain, or some other community activity that you guys would like. Maybe we can do a poll, or share some opinions in the group later and see what you guys would like to see next.
Yes. It can also be with the labs team. It's true that since we are doing these community lives, you probably saw them a bit less, but that's also possible. We can definitely talk to them. And yeah, that's mainly it.
Yeah, and on the lab
By the
side as
way,
well, we were also discussing internally potentially doing some workshops about Massa Tech. That could be a good introductory way into the Massa ecosystem if some of you guys might want to be a developer, or if you want to start building something with us. That could be a great way to do it. And we're also preparing that for some of the future hackathon activities that we have in store right now.
I'll drop the MetaMask Snap link, by the way, for Massa here, if you guys want to check it. I would advise you to install it and try, and if you have any feedback, you can always get back to us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been using it and it works really, really nicely.
Okay.
Yes, I guess that's it. We can wrap it up for this one, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Yes, sir. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Hope that you enjoyed this one. We'll try to bring other big guests in the future as well. We're in contact with some other projects, so hopefully some of them would like to join too. MetaMask was quite excited to join one of our community lives, so that's nice for us to hear. And yeah, we'll keep in touch with you. Feel free to reach out to us at any moment, and we'll see you next week, hopefully.
You said it all. Perfect. See you guys. See you soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.